in temperance and women's suffrage, because the temperance movement was the only organization that supported votes for women unconditionally. And architecturally, the arts and crafts movement was in full force at that time, and it substantially influenced what was built here, with a dash of Art Deco. Now, the residential area developed retaining the immediate landscape with hills and slopes. When you go up Armadale from Bloor Street, one side's higher than the other. They leveled the road off, but they didn't alter the lots, and they didn't cut down trees. They left the remnant forest that was here. So we've got a lot of huge oak trees, particularly. The elms are gone. They were the victims of Dutch elm disease. These oak trees, particularly, are part of a gene pool that goes back a few thousand years. They didn't alter. We're talking around the First World War, and they didn't alter the landscape in part because some people still had wells, and you don't want to interfere with the groundwater, and they had the good sense not to do that. This is the Bloor Street Viaduct of which I was talking, only this was on October the 16th, 1954. So the Humber River goes completely across the whole valley. That was Hurricane Hazel. It was a big flood. I'll pass that around. Now, when York Township rerouted Bloor Street and gave new high-class apartments and businesses, this lovely little Art Deco, well, isn't that little Art Deco, is the Kingsway Pharmacy from 1936. And I mean, they had a pharmacy dispensary, but they also had a perfume counter and cosmetics and a candy and chocolate counter. We're not talking bag candy, we're talking very good quality chocolates and candy, and a soda fountain and bar where you could get sandwiches and that, and a beauty salon and dental and medical suites. And it's still there. Now this is Bloor and Jane in the early 1960s, taken from in front of the Odeon Humber. Lindsay Studios is visible across the road. Lindsay Studios was a very long-lasting and high-class interior design and furniture and gift shop. A lot of my mother's wedding presents came from there. Now, this is Bloor and Jane about 1940. It was a Lions gas station on the corner and a Bank of Toronto. That's the TD Bank that's on the corner of Bloor and Jane now. And it was well before the Odeon Theatre. That went up after the war. And this is same place looking the other way and showing the Loblaws store. This was the second location for a Loblaws store on Bloor Street. It shows the Lions gas station. You can tell that it was taken at the same time because this car is out front in both. Now, no, there are a lot of gas stations along Bloor Street. It was highway number 5. This was 401 through the city. Gas stations were important. This is Bloor and the South Kingsway in the 1930s looking east. And they were digging and restructuring the intersection. This is the South Kingsway looking north, about 1923. This little piece in here is the old Beltline Railway. It was all sand. They dug a lot of sand out, filled in part of the South Kingsway, and raised Bloor Street, 1923. They were raising Bloor Street. York Township was restructuring Bloor Street to curve out to where the new bridge was going to be. It's one of the few areas where they did make substantial alterations in the landscape. Now, this is the McCall-Frontenac service station at Bloor and Willard, again on the Bloor-Danforth Highway. And the gas stations were quite interesting. Here, they're working on the Bloor streetcar loop in the 1930s at Jane, and it shows the previous Loblaw store, not that newer one that you're passing around. This one preceded that. And it was on the north side of Bloor Street, opposite the streetcar loop. So it was one of the first incursions of chain stores into the village. Like Starbucks now. Now, Bloor Street went up and down. There were ravines that went across Bloor Street. When you go across on the subway, you know how the subway pops out of the ground. Oh, that's going through stream valleys. And when they put Bloor Street through as a highway, they and added streetcars, you had to have a grade level for the streetcars. You couldn't go up and down hills. And they were also putting in sewers and water mains. And for that, again, you want fairly level. So, what they did at Clendenin and Bloor was build trestles, wooden trestles. And on top of the trestles, they laid the sewers. And after the sewers were laid atop the trestles, they covered the trestles. They filled it all in. And then they added more on top of that to bring it up to the road height above, which is another 20 feet higher than the trestles. The use of wooden trestles and burying them was an old railway technique. The railroads used to build wooden bridges, and they discovered that the wooden bridges got a little shaky pretty quickly, and the wood would rot and it would fall down and they'd have injuries, and it was not good. So they buried them, and the only part of the railway bridge that wasn't trestled was the bridge across between the what looks like hills. This is the Kennedy estate looking north. It's a little east of Runnymede Road. It was named Lakeview. Up in the corner here, you can see Western Tech. And the house in the middle was the Kennedy house. They had streams and 3 trout ponds that flowed off down towards Hyde Park. It was quite the place.
And does it still exist?
The house is still there. It's changed quite a bit, but you would still recognize it. Now, as well as gas stations, at Bloor and Kennedy, this building is still there, and it, we believe, was originally a Studebaker dealership. There was a Studebaker dealership on Bay Street that was almost identical. Now, this is Bloor and Runnymede, 1924. And this building on the corner that is the bank is the McDonald's that is there now. They tore the bank down and rebuilt it, the McDonald's that is very similar. And this, the rest of it, this is still there. I think Starbucks is about there. And this is the men laying the streetcar track. This is the Runnymede Theatre when it was still a theatre. It was after it had been subdivided into 2 theatres. I remember it when it was 1, and there was a marquee out front too. I did not bring a little piece of terrazzo with me that I picked up on the street 2 weeks ago. When the City Works Department or the subcontractors or whoever was redoing the sidewalk out front, they took it up with jackhammers. And they didn't think that that terrazzo from 1928 was all that important. So they're now having to fix it. I hope it costs them an arm and a leg. No, was it 1928 terrazzo? I can't believe that they could be so silly. Anyways, that was what it was like before it was chapters, and the ceiling inside. I remember after going to see a movie with my parents, sitting back in my chair and watching the clouds and stars up above. Oh, that was wonderful. Ellis was a local, mainly a Swansea, but Junction architect. He had a reputation and built things outside of this area as well, all over Toronto and other parts of the province. And Ellis Avenue is named after him. He did a little bit of entrepreneurial development as well. And this is the Ellis apartments that were built about 1925. This is a photograph of them from 1984. And they're a quite lovely example of the high-class apartments that York Township was so proud, excepting they were in the city, so York didn't get anything out of it. Now, remember I said about the house up on Gothic that became, and it became a hospital and is now condos. And below that, on the north side of Bloor Street overlooking High Park, was a swimming pool when I was a kid, called the Mineral Baths. Everybody called it Minis, short for the Mineral Baths. But it really was a mineral bath. It started off as a mineral bath attached to the hospital, and it was used, the mineral baths were used for treating people with tuberculosis. It was supposed to be beneficial to them. And until, I don't know how recently, but certainly into the 50s, they had an outdoor school in High Park for kids who had breathing difficulty. It was more for post-polio kids in latter years, but it started out with tuberculin kids. This is the mineral baths. And this little fountain in the middle is spraying out mineral water. And the nurses up at the top were responsible for looking after the patients as well as the others that were in the pool. And of course, one of the major adjuncts, one of the 2 major adjuncts to this area in terms of space and light and good quality of air and all that was High Park there and the Humber River that way.